Alright, Standard 10 Substandard C. Describe the significance of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. All three of these amendments together were passed during the Reconstruction era, and so they are called together collectively the Reconstruction Amendments. We're going to look at them all together right here for a moment, and let's look at them and then we'll describe their importance. Alright, so the 13th Amendment, December 1865, it abolished slavery in the United States. No more slavery. Slavery is outlawed. All slaves are set free. Alright, so that's the 13th Amendment. Pretty simple, pretty easy to remember. Okay, the 14th Amendment is a little bit more complicated. Alright, July 28th, 1868. The first thing it does is it grants citizenship. It grants to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. Now notice that the 13th Amendment ends slavery. It's targeted for African Americans, and all these are passed by the Radical Republicans and the Radical Reconstruction Congress. So the first one's for African Americans to be freed. Now the citizenship here with the 14th grants to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. All slaves at that time, I'll say all, most of them had been born in the United States, so they were, with this 14th Amendment, granted citizenship. So the 14th Amendment also restricts the states, and if we look at the history of this, we can kind of understand it. You know, we said with the 13th Amendment, white Southerners were angered by this and started passing black codes. We talked about that in a previous video. We're going to talk about it again in the next. But white people didn't want blacks to be socially equal, so they started passing these black codes that pretty much re-enslaved them, put them back to work, and kept them from voting and kept them from having social equality, total social equality. Some of their civil liberties were denied them. And so we see that because of the 13th Amendment, these white Southerners are going to react that way, but the Radical Republicans react to the white Southerners passing black codes with this 14th Amendment. And the states were passing those black codes. The states were. So here the Radical Republicans' intention is to restrict the states from doing that. Restrict them from passing these black codes and keeping them in effect. Said no state could make laws to deprive citizens, in other words African American citizens, of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now in civics you're going to learn that this due process of law is in the Fifth Amendment. And here it's put here again in the 14th, and the reason why is to protect African Americans from states who argued, these states are arguing that the Bill of Rights were meant to regulate the national government but not the states. In this case, in the 14th, the Radical Republicans push this through and say, now you states, you have to give citizens, in other words African Americans, the rights to life, liberty, and property, and you can't take those unless you have due process of law. So due process is guaranteed to African Americans against the states. Alright, and then equal protection under the law. Since African Americans are now citizens, and that's who the citizenship was granted to, African Americans who had just been released from slavery, and then they were given due process of law protections against states who were trying to pass these black codes. Now they're given equal protection under the law, and it mandates that all citizens be guaranteed equal protection of the law, and the states had to abide by this equal protection clause. So the Radical Republicans drafted this 14th Amendment in order to protect these African Americans from these black codes that were being passed. We're gonna go more in detail on that in the next video. Now the 15th Amendment, March 30th, 1870, the Radical Republicans pushed through. It prohibits the denial of voting rights based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. And so now black men get the right to vote with the 15th Amendment. So let's talk about the significance of these. All slaves in the United States, every one of them, over 4 million, were given freedom with the 13th. So slavery is made illegal in the United States, so all slaves are set free in both the North and the South. You know, we talked about the Emancipation Proclamation before. On the test, if you're asked what freed all the slaves in the United States, don't put the answer as the Emancipation Proclamation, because it didn't free slaves in all the United States. It only freed them in the southern states that were in rebellion. And Abraham Lincoln did that because he didn't want to anger the border states who had slavery as well. But his step was in the right direction and made winning the war to end slavery as a goal while they were fighting the war. So now the war's over. The 13th Amendment finally frees slaves in all states, north, south, border states. It doesn't matter. It's all over the United States. It is, everybody's free, no slaves anymore. All right. Now the 14th Amendment here has several implications, okay? First of all, you know, we said that it had a citizenship clause in it. So citizenship, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States and of the states in which they live. So anyone born or naturalized in the United States is a citizen of the state and the United States. So with that, the 14th Amendment made former slaves, all of them who had just been released, citizens. And then that invalidated that Dred Scott decision we talked about in the last unit. Or actually that was in this unit, yeah, in Standard 9, excuse me, Standard 9. So the 14th Amendment is going to invalidate the Dred Scott decision that said that Dred Scott was not a citizen and therefore could not sue in court. All right. Now, the 14th Amendment is also going to have another significance. The Equality Clause we talked about. Equal protection of the law. All citizens must be guaranteed equal protection of the law. We call that the Equality Clause, or equal protection of the law. Now, what that's going to do, we're going to talk about Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, and then Brown versus the Board of Education, and then in the 1960s we're going to talk about the civil rights movement that are coming. Now, the 14th Amendment, this Equal Protection Clause, equality, the rights that all citizens have equality, even African Americans, it's going to lay the groundwork for the coming, in the future, civil rights movement in the 1960s, and even in the 1940s even. So we're going to see that this 14th Amendment is going to impact this, where African Americans say, hey, we want equality with white people. It's also going to be used by women's liberation in the 1970s. It's going to be used by the Hispanic movement, United Farm Workers movement. It's also going to be used by gay rights movement here and today, and even by white people. Some firemen were fired in New York are going to use the 14th Amendment Equality Clause as a right of theirs. So the 14th Amendment is very important, and it's very important to know that it's going to lay the groundwork for a future civil rights movement for African Americans in the 1960s. Civil liberties. It's also going to be used in the 60s during the Warren Court, we're going to talk about, the most liberal court in U.S. history, Earl Warren, and it's going to extend and strengthen civil liberties for individuals. In other words, individual rights or civil liberties for individuals. We're going to talk about some of those cases later on. I believe it's in Unit 9. So the Supreme Court is going to use the 14th Amendment to extend civil liberties to all people accused of crimes, and that's also going to be used with the selective incorporation. That's what we're talking about. It's going to incorporate the Bill of Rights using this 14th Amendment and apply it to states and say they have to follow it. And we get that from this: no state can make laws to deprive citizenship of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Alright, so that's the impact of the 14th Amendment. Now, the 15th Amendment, real simple. African American males get a right to vote. Now, African American women and white women still did not get the chance to vote. Still not legal for them to vote. They won't get their right to vote, their suffrage, until the 19th Amendment in 1920. But in this one, the 15th Amendment, in a Reconstruction, African American men get the right to vote. Okay, I believe we have met our standards to describe the significance of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. If you have any questions, ask me in class. And, this lays the groundwork for a lot of stuff we're going to do in the future. Good luck on the test. Good luck on the EOCT.